Hi, I'm Belle Holder, the host of UNCTAD Conversations. Today we're at the Colony Club Hotel, which is located on Barbados' west coast, home to many properties just like this one. But initially when Barbados won the bid to host UNCTAD 15, the expectation was that there would be thousands of visitors teeming all over the island, getting to experience what Barbados has to offer. Of course, with the onset of COVID, things changed, and UNCTAD 15 is now a virtual conference, but there are many opportunities available there as well. We'll hear today directly from Professor Avinash Persaud, who is the Special Envoy to the Prime Minister on Investment and Financial Services. Our UNCTAD conversation is straight ahead. You are Special Envoy to the Prime Minister on Investment and Financial Services. And people may think or perceive that as just, oh, is he a numbers man? Right? What gets you going in the morning? What's that thing that you wake up and your feet hit the floor and you're thinking, this is what I'm going to tackle today?
Well, what is development? Development is not numbers. Development is that we, our sons and daughters, can choose the life they wish to lead. That is development. And so when we see young people and we look at the life they lead, and if they are leading a constrained life, a narrower life than they would like to lead, it makes me sad. And I think economic development is about putting our people, all of our people, in a position that they can choose the life they wish to lead. They may not want to choose the life I lead or I want to lead, but they need to be able to have that choice. That means making sure they have the skills, making sure they have the opportunities, making sure they have the access. And that's why trade is so important.
There's a fantastic word that you just used. It's a simple word, but it means so much. Access. And when I hear that word sometimes, even let's just localize that for a minute in terms of the context of Barbados, that there are some Barbadians who come into the world and they have every opportunity, every access. I always feel like those are the easy ones, huh? That's the easy one.
Most definitely.
Exactly.
Development is not about the top 20%.
Exactly. Then there are households and families and children in this country who don't even realize that they should have the audacity to think, I want that, or I can achieve that. And those are the ones that we need to reach, and those are the ones whose brains we need to expand to show them, but yes, you can. You should have every opportunity and every access. How do we reach those children?
And that's partly about them opening up their eyes to the possibilities. It's also about dealing with their sense of confidence that they could do it. But it's not just about eyes and confidence, it's also about skills. And we have to make sure that we acquire skills, we're motivated to acquire skills, that we want to get better, and in a way that the rest of the world recognizes. I think the future of the world economy is encapsulated in a website that every Barbadian can go and have a look at, or anyone else, called Upwork.com. Mm-hmm. Upwork.com is the future economy of the world. And under Upwork.com, all kinds of employers, at the moment mainly Americans and Brits, post online the kind of jobs that they need. And all kinds of employees, today mainly people from the Philippines and India and Vietnam, are saying, yes, I can do that. I've got the qualifications for that. And they are doing these jobs, professional services, from their home, and work and trade. This is the new trade. The new trade is not about airports and planes and ships.
It's not only
and
commodities.
Packages. It's about selling weightless things. Selling things that don't go through the post, don't weigh anything. It's because it's our professional skills, our experience and our knowledge being transferred. Mm-hmm. And our people have to, so trade for us is how do we make sure that our people have easy access to these websites, this online digital marketplace, because there are many obstacles to them, as simple as having an international bank account. Mm-hmm. And transferring money.
Before we even get to the international bank account, one of the things that became so clear within the past year and a half was COVID happened. We needed to keep the nation's children safe within their school setting, which of course, in Barbados, education have always been viewed as the great equalizer. And I think what the pandemic did, where you were forcing children now to go to online school, is that it showed us that there are so many children in this country who were at a disadvantage, who didn't even have a simple device to create the same access you're talking about. And it was more than just putting a tablet or a laptop in their hand because then maybe they don't have Wi-Fi.
It's true, but I don't think those are our biggest obstacles, because the reality is...
We can fix those.
Yeah, we can fix those. The average Barbadian has 2 mobile phones, not 1. We have fiber, yes, there are many people who don't have those things, but if you look at the international charities, the governments, the effort to get everyone a tablet, every child a tablet, to get broadband, we're going to hit that target. If that's our problem, we're going to win that battle. But I think the battles are bigger than that. And I think that, Sir Arthur Lewis famously said that the solution to poverty is not money, it is knowledge. And almost instinctively, West Indians know that.
Yeah.
And they focus on education. But we've been doing it now for 50 odd years, perhaps even a little bit longer, say 60 odd years. And that's not enough. We need not just knowledge, we also need ownership. Ownership also matters. So, I think the example I like to use is that imagine one day in the future, Belle, there is a robot that, believe it or not, can do everything that you can do. Every single thing. And all you need to do is in the morning, you need to sort of set the robot off, and then you can sit back in your armchair and pour yourself some coffee and read a good book or watch a good movie. The robot goes off, does their work, comes back, and that's great. You own that robot, fantastic. Now imagine exact same robot, but Microsoft owns that robot. Your life is completely different. So this is not just about technology. This is not just about the software designers. It's also about ownership.
Yeah.
So in this future world, we need people to have skills, and we need to have skills in which they can claim ownership of their lives and claim ownership of their knowledge. And there are a bunch of obstacles to that, and they're very new and different obstacles, and that's really what we're going to be discussing in UNCTAD. It's not the old obstacles of tariffs, of how difficult it is to get things through the port, although that's something we need to continue to improve, how distant things are. These are new, interesting obstacles.
Right. So and it's funny, when you were talking about ownership, one of the things that came to my mind is even the people who operate in our cultural industries, those people who are creatives, and there's so many issues around that. And over the past year and a half, so many of us have gone online in terms of sharing information. So, and you're right. So if I put up something online and someone in some part of the world is using it, how do I even track that? How do I even say, hey, that's mine and you owe me some money in order to use this? How do I license? How do I license here in Barbados, in the US, in Europe?
The digital world may be easier to track. How do you assert your intellectual property? Those are kind of things we're going to be discussing at UNCTAD. How do you claim it? How do you assert it? How do you police it? But I think actually the digital world, as we've all discovered with COVID, is not a world of great freedom. It's also a world of everyone's monitoring what you're doing. There's great control as well.
Yes. Okay. So we're going to continue this conversation about what is trade and the importance of trade, but it's more than just commodities, right?
Yes.
We'll do that as UNCTAD Conversation continues. Our conversation with Professor Avinash Persaud continues now. One of the things that many of us are really proud of is the fact that Barbados is the host country for UNCTAD. But of course, we won the bid prior to COVID, and it would have certainly been exciting, and many of us would have been able to benefit directly by having a number of people physically on island. That, of course, has changed, and now it has become a virtual conference. You feel very strongly about that, about recognizing the importance of Barbados being the chair.
I played a modest role in bringing UNCTAD to Barbados as part of a team, and we had to really ask ourselves deeply why. Because it's fantastic for the first small state, the first Caribbean state, but to what end? Because
those are all nice bragging rights.
It's not inexpensive either.
Right.
When it was going to be non-virtual, there were a whole host of issues. There are going to be lots of logistical nightmares, security issues.
Almost
How
like
do you
hosting the Olympics, you know what I mean?
Yes, I mean, how do you get 190 odd finance ministers from all over the world, into a meeting room at around the same time, with all their security, all these other people? So we had to ask ourselves, you have a choice. Do you want to host UNCTAD or host some other event? And I think that we felt that trade has been the single most important thing in lifting people out of poverty. Since 1980, we've had the largest reduction of absolute poverty ever in our history. And it's the single thing that really caused that was the arrival of China and India into the WTO, the World Trade Organization, and the opening up of trade. So trade has huge power. But trade means something different for us. We're not big manufacturers. Mm-hmm. We are on the front line of climate change, and that's having a big impact. We are seeing an explosion of non-communicable diseases like diabetes and heart issues, creating an emphasis on our people eating right, as opposed to cheap but processed stuff that comes in on boats. And so being chair of all the committees gives us the ability to adjust the agenda, to influence agenda, to make sure that this trade that we're discussing is a trade that's relevant to us, relevant to developing countries, relevant to the Caribbean, relevant to small states, relevant to all of those on the front line of climate change.
Right. And of course, but trade means, and you hit the nail on the head already, where trade means different things to different countries. So, and often when I think about trade, and I know we think internationally, but I also think about the region. And there has to be a way for us to come together and harness our collective power and then go to the world with that. Do you see what I mean? But of course, everybody has their individual island pride. So how do we do that? And I know that you've been quoted as saying, we need to get together in the region faster. And then the question is how?
Well, one of the things I've done recently is chair the Caricom Commission on the Economy. And we have some old-fashioned trade problems. We have some ports and ferries and airline issues. Mm-hmm. We are the most expensive region to move things around.
Right.
Well, it's not just goods, data roaming. I'm part of a team trying to negotiate changing roaming charges. There's a lot we can do to make it easier to move data, people, and goods around the region. But also we need to create bigger markets. So we talked earlier about the importance of ownership. Mm-hmm. Let's take the example of the software industry. When Barbadians buy, a Barbadian company or an agency or anyone in the Caribbean buys some software, they go abroad because we don't have a big enough market. Or do we? Because if you actually look at what the government of Barbados spends on software and you multiply that every year times 15 countries, we are a market. So if we could have a single procurement market for software, we'd be getting some of our own software producers. And then we can start then having stuff internationally being sold that we own, as well as our workers are part of those companies. And so I think creating regional markets does make us stronger in ability to have a bigger space in international trade.
We've talked about the Caricom single market and economy for a long time. What progress or inroads, in your assessment, have we made?
We've made very limited progress, partly because of the tyranny of unanimity. And although the protocols don't actually require it, Caricom has been very nervous about doing anything without unanimity. And so one of the main recommendations, the two main recommendations of the Caricom Commission, is firstly this idea of subsidiarity. What that means is, one of the problems of Caricom is that there's a set of people who think we should do everything regionally, and a set of people who think we should do nothing regionally. And reality sits in between. You don't want Caricom in Georgetown working out your garbage collection every week. But you do want them working out what should be the food hygiene standards for the import or export of meat or vegetables or anything. So we've got to work out what is appropriate to be done at the regional level. And the second thing is something we call enhanced cooperation. So if 5 out of the 15 countries are committed to doing something and want to move ahead, they can. They don't need to wait for the other 10.
Right.
So at the moment, people think of CARICOM as 15 countries squabbling all the time. It's not true. Things have been stuck in CARICOM for decades because one country disagrees or 2 countries disagree. The 10 want to go ahead, but 5 don't, or 12, or 13, or 14. And so allowing those countries that want to go ahead will show those who are reluctant, because most of the reasons why people don't want to go ahead is they're afraid of the unknown. They're uncertain. If they see other people going ahead, it's not causing a problem, nuclear winter has not descended upon them, then they'll say, well, I'll join too. And so I think that will get movement. So the main thing the CARICOM Commission really proposed was a change of governance, as opposed to attacking once more some of the restrictions we have between countries.
One of the things I would love to see, this conversation that we are having right now, I would love to see this conversation starting in our primary schools and going through to our high schools, so that we already have Caribbean citizens who are thinking about each other and don't automatically think, the minute I get the opportunity, I'm gone. I'm heading to the US, to Canada, to the UK. Do you see what I mean? So that they also start to see each other as brothers and sisters in the region that can then together make a difference internationally.
Yes, I think the reality though that we have to deal with, and when people go abroad, that is, I met Mia Moore Motley, age 18, at university. And we were in a group of West Indians, and I think I probably can't remember which island people were from. We were just Caribbean people.
Right.
We didn't care.
Yes.
And I think when we go abroad, we are much more unified than when
we're Caribbean people.
But I think that even if we got that unity, why are people leaving? It's because there aren't enough opportunities here. So we need to have a sense of unity, yes, but that's not going to be enough. That's not going to be sufficient to keep people. We need to create opportunities.
What are some of the ways that in which you are hoping that we can do that, to create those opportunities? Because I like I just mentioned already, I am looking at it that we need to start really, really young. That there is something generationally that those young people can change that maybe, others have been fighting about for a long time. But if we start to influence them earlier, they can make a huge difference.
Right. I'm not sure I see that as the obstacle.
Okay.
I think that, to me, if you were to fast forward to the future, a successful Caribbean, what is that? That is people who have been very well educated here, who are able to sell and share something down the internet to the whole world, and they're happy to live here because of the lifestyle they lead. So we have people doing highly value-added things, so they get paid a lot of money to live a great life here in the Caribbean. And that means that we need to make sure that our education and skills, and education is not just about school. A major, yes, school education is very important, but re-education, the skills we learned at school are now out of date. We need people to be committed to perpetual education and skills. A lot of skills are learned not in school, right, but at work, and when you're working because you realize you need this additional skill and you do this part-time. So to me, making that easy for people is going to be very important, and making sure that they have skills that are internationally recognized. And then we have to look at all the obstacles they have in selling stuff and sharing stuff globally. That may be about financial payments, it may be about banks, it may be about accreditation. The future is going to have 4 or 5 major superhighways, the Googles and Facebooks, and how are Barbadians and Caribbean people, how can we make sure that they can get easy access to sell their wares and their ideas and the intellectual property and everything on those platforms. At the moment, it's very hard for them.
Yeah.
We have to break that down.
Okay, so I know that you feel really strongly about e-commerce. We're going to talk a little bit more about that when we come back on UNCTAD Conversations. The buzzword, I mean, has been around for, I don't know, last 5-10 years. We've all been talking about entrepreneurship. We've all looked to entrepreneurship to be one of the things that could change people's lives and the economy. And especially in a COVID situation where we've had so many people lost their jobs, especially for women, in terms of becoming entrepreneurs and creating their own businesses. We were talking about e-commerce. And so definitely everybody's online. Funny enough, I mean, when was the last time you went to the United States and you went into a mall? You actually go into malls now and they're not as busy anymore because everybody's buying everything online. It comes right to my doorstep. So how do we help entrepreneurs get their product online and then people be able to access that product and pay for it from all around the world?
Well, 2 things. Firstly, there is a bit of a cult of entrepreneurship, right? And I don't like cults in general. So the first thing I'd say is that...
Are you saying you don't like entrepreneurship then?
Well, I think we have to put it in the right perspective.
Okay.
Our society needs a good mix. We need to have more entrepreneurs. We actually have a lot of entrepreneurs. I've been quoted saying that we criminalize entrepreneurship. That we actually, a lot of our entrepreneurs are there, they start off being entrepreneurs, they're trying to trade, they're vendors, and then there are all kinds of reasons why they cannot grow, they're trapped. So I think if all the people who want to be entrepreneurs, who try to be entrepreneurs, we allowed to be entrepreneurs, we'd be doing really well. So to incorporate, to VAT register, to be legal is expensive.
Right.
Many of the entrepreneurs we see around us, a food cart, a van.
But true entrepreneurs
is illegal.
But true entrepreneurs will argue and tell you that's not an entrepreneur, right? That's not an entrepreneur. What issue are they solving? That's somebody who has a subsistent income, who's just making a little extra money, and that entrepreneurship is something different entirely.
I don't know, because it depends how well some of those vans are creating a surplus.
Right.
They're not subsistence.
Right.
They're filling a need and they're making a surplus and they're investing in a bigger van or whatever. But the problem is they're actually illegal.
Right.
So they can't take that to the bank, because yes, that place that has got a nice queue that you're waiting on, you're not meant to be there. You are not an incorporated entity, so therefore you can't get a bank loan, you can't expand. We have lots of problems. We criminalize and stop existing entrepreneurs. So I don't think that we actually need to have to convert people who are not entrepreneurs into entrepreneurs. We have to free up the people who are entrepreneurs and stop sitting on them and stopping them doing things. Also, we need to recognize that society needs a balance. In the cult of entrepreneurship, everyone's an entrepreneur. Well, I don't want my heart surgeon to be an entrepreneur. I don't want the person marking my test to be an entrepreneur. We also need high professional standards, so we need a better mix. And what we're doing at the moment is we are sort of stamping down on the existing entrepreneurs we have, and we need to stop doing that. We certainly need to inspire our people. If these entrepreneurs that we no longer stamp down are successful and move on and to bigger and better things, that will inspire our kids. They will see real life examples. At the moment, they don't see real life examples that look like them, and that is a problem. So I can teach entrepreneurship, we can talk about it, we can conceptualize it, but they need to see people who look like them being successful. And there are people who look like them who are trying, and they're unable to. But even when they're able to, the other thing we need to do is we need to strive for greatness. there is a little bit of a belief that just because I want to be an entrepreneur, that the government must give me money, and my product that I've just dreamt about and I've produced, which is actually not very good, that everyone would want it. And so to be an entrepreneur, it's about a great product. And one of the things we're actually trying to do is to come up with ways of, because I've seen a lot of my friends who've tried to be entrepreneurs, and where they've had a break is when they've actually had some, not necessarily money. Someone has said, that's a great product. Someone with status.
You only need one yes.
You know, a friend who made teas, so didn't grow teas here in Barbados, but came up with tea brands. He would mix teas, he would smell teas, and he would have a tea called a Barbados morning or Tobago afternoon. And he was trying his best. When he won a competition on quality of the teas, and the winning entry, the Queen would taste his tea, and she wrote a letter, great tea. Suddenly, everyone wanted to fund him. He had no problems funding. So we need people to strive for greatness and to find ways in which they can win competitions and show the world that this is a great product. Just because you're doing it doesn't mean the world owes you something.
Right.
You have to show and you have to strive. And there are a lot of competitions out there. We need to get our people able to compete and to show that they've got a great product.
You're the son of an economist.
Yes.
What was that like? Did you have these types of conversations with your father? Is this something that was a direct influence on you, or was it more subtle?
So my father's superpower was that he was very good at identifying all of his failings. And he felt, which was more wisdom than superpower, that his kids were likely to have his failings, because he was going to, just the nature of his home and what he did. So he tried his best to make sure that we would be different than him. So he felt he wasn't very entrepreneurial. He felt he wasn't very bold. He always used to tell me, Avinash, be a player. That do risky things, have bold statements, be unafraid to have a bold position, because you've got one life, you've got to make it matter. And he did less of that, but he certainly encouraged all of his kids to do that. And in his later life, he used to be a good saver. He was a naturalized Barbadian. He was very much involved in the 1960s and 1970s in economic policy, national insurance scheme, other things, and he was a good saver. And after a while, even on his public sector income, because he was a civil servant, he had developed quite a significant amount of savings, which he then invested privately. And of all the economists, so he worked very closely with his great friends, Willie Damas and Sir Alistair McIntyre, but of all of them, he was the only one who actually invested and knew how to invest. And they would be coming to him for investment advice, and that taught him a lot about entrepreneurship and about business.
It's clear that taught you a lot about and shaped who you are today, because in mentioning that, your entire aura, disposition in this entire conversation that we were having completely changed. And I think it's a wonderful example of some of the things that we need to be passing on to our children. And don't hide our failures, but celebrate them and use it as a teaching tool.
That's right.
Fantastic. And I think that's an excellent note to finish on. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Beth.
Thank you so much. We've been talking to Avinash Persaud, and this has been a wonderful conversation, an UNCTAD conversation. And I think some of the special things that were shared here today is really the conversations that we need to have with our children and make sure that they are aware of what's happening in the world and how they can be great. I'm Belle Holder. Thank you so much for watching.